Good evening. So, as a parent, as myself, I've been really reflecting in this section of text. As a parent giving advice comes with so many things that we're going to be looking at as it being so valuable and important. Now, as one is giving advice to a child, it is probably because they've experienced it themselves. And so they're passing on that knowledge and that wisdom to their child to help them, of course, better themselves sooner than what they had, and probably help them to not have that personal experience with it because of how hard it may have been. And also, it could be as they have learned it from others, and so they don't want it to happen to their own children. And so it is to prevent them from possibly doing something. Now, as we go through this section of text, we'll see that Solomon is passing down wisdom and a warning to his son. And so we see that we are to beware of sinful company. And as Solomon is passing this wisdom down, just before our section of text that we see here, he gives, in verses 2 through 7, a list to kind of bring out this list here. I have it shown and broken up in this way. And it starts off with the word to. It says, to know wisdom and instruction, to discern the sayings of understanding, to receive instruction in wise behavior, righteousness, justice, and equality, to give produce to the naive, to the young, knowledge and discern. And even within that list, he says, a wise man will hear and increase in learning. A man of understanding will acquire wise counsel. To understand a proverbs and a figure, the words of the wise and their riddles. Now this is the key verse, as I'll mention this one next, but he has it, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Now, I should all capture our attention as to why to learn and to gain knowledge, as that is the first thing we must understand, to know knowledge and to have wisdom. But then if that didn't catch your attention, the second part to that same verse should. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. If you despise wisdom from God, you are making yourselves in this category. If a son disregards the wisdom and knowledge of a parent, they're going to fall prey to what their parents are trying to warn them of. And so we get into the actual section of text that Solomon gives off, and the first thing he starts with is, pay attention to what I have to say, for it has wisdom and knowledge. It says, hear, my son, your father's instructions, and do not forsake your mother's teachings. Indeed, they are a graceful wreath to your head, an adornment about your neck. Now, these are some things that we'll see this kind of figure of speech happen throughout all of Proverbs, about something being on the head or around the neck. And for the wreath around the head, the focus at that point for a second is more of a victor's crown. It is something that is to be worn with honor and joy, as one would receive this after winning a battle, being victorious in a battle, or even winning a game, as we see some in the Olympics, be wearing the wreath as a victory, as an honor. And then also we could see some of pictures of this as one wearing it at a wedding, as is joy, and again, honor. And so we are to wear this wisdom and knowledge that our parents are handing down to us with joy and honor. And then we also see that the necklace that we are to receive as a gift, the adornment about our neck. The neck is a very important part of the body. It's very vulnerable. Our head provides the rest of the body with food and nutrients as we need, and the blood from our heart goes to our head for our brain to have function. And so as we are putting on this necklace of value, is something that we have to understand is not of value in wealth, but in the value of how important it may be. One of the ways to think about this is how a mother passes down a necklace or a ring that has been in the family for generations. They pass down that thing just not as valuable personally, but not in great value as in wealth. So it's important. So what the teaching that we are receiving for our mother and parents are with great wealth in the fact of how important it may be. One of the definitions I want to share was value to regard something that is held to deserve. It's important. It's useful. And so that's how we are to wear wisdom, wear knowledge, as it is useful. It is important. And of course, as we're keeping the wreath around our head, as it is something we are to keep on our minds at all times. It is something that we should not forget. Now, I personally had some wisdom passed down to me a long time ago that I have never forgotten, but sadly I did not take it. My uncle told me when I was pretty young that whenever I had the chance to save for retirement, the sooner I started on it, the better off I'll be. Well, sadly, I did not take his wisdom to action. But it is something that how we are to wear this wisdom. That's how we are to behave with this wisdom, how we are to see this wisdom with great valuable importance and actually put it into action with joy and honor. Now, we see in the actual section of text that Solomon starts to get into in verses 10 through 14 is what sinners will entice with. The text reads, "My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, 'Come with us, let us lie in wait for blood, let us ambush the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them alive like Sheol, even whole. As for those who go down into the pit, we will find all kinds of precious wealth. We will fill our house with spoil and throw in your lot with us. We shall all have one purpose.'" So Solomon lists off some things that they may do, and he kind of gets into extremes to killing and murdering. And so they seek out anyone for gain. They swallow them alive like Sheol and go down into the pit. In the King James, the NIV, and the New Living Translation, use this word grave instead of Sheol. And the New Living Translation later, instead of where it mentions pit, it says the pit of death. Another section to kind of look at this pit of death, Sheol, is in Numbers 16, verse 30. It says, "But if the Lord brings about an entirely new thing, and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them up, they descend alive into Sheol. Then you will understand that these men have spurned the Lord." The men that were so defiant against the Lord just opened up the ground and swallowed them alive, straight into hell. That's what the pit is. That's what Sheol is. And that's where he's sending them. And that's where these men, how they target someone, they swallow them alive. Just as hell can never be full, these people will seek everyone. And they realize that they can never be satisfied. They'll never be full themselves. They'll just keep wanting more. And so, when we look at the reason why would someone be doing this? Why would someone target the innocent? Well, in verse 13, they will find all kinds of precious wealth, and then they'll fill their house with spoils. Sadly, money plays a big part in people's lives, to the part that they're willing to kill for it. And that doesn't matter who's in their way. And so people will say and do anything that for you to do what they want. Some approaches they may have is that they may say things like, "Oh, you are such a chicken. Don't be such a baby." Anything that is putting someone down or just diminishing someone to provoke a "I'll show you" response. That's what they want. Another approach is through begging or manipulation. And lastly, some will even bribe or threaten for you to do something that they want. Again, these are some ways that people may be focusing to get us to do something so they can benefit and gain. Sadly, I have a personal experience with this, as I was talked into shoplifting. Of course, as a kid, and some of the things that my friends at that time were saying was, "It's just a piece of candy. You won't get caught. We've been doing it this whole time for months. No one has ever said anything. We're not hurting anyone." Right? The list of things that they said kept going on. But the question is, why would someone entice us to do things like this? Well, verse 13 and 14. It's all about money. It could be about power. And also, misery loves company. The next question is, why would someone listen to be around someone that is going to use them or take advantage of or even turn blame to when things go wrong? When we meet someone that is outgoing and fun, we may sometimes ignore that bad behavior because we are entertained. We find that, hey, I have a cool story to tell someone, a funny story. I can be interesting myself through this person. Or they may find that I'm actually seen. I feel like I'm appreciated, or I'm a part of something. Those feelings can get us in trouble sometimes. And we all want to feel like we're accepted and important. But again, those things can be taken advantage of. As we may be blinded by our own self-image of wanting to be popular or interesting, we allow sinful things to happen, all for the sake of a funny story. We see in 1 Corinthians 15:33, it says, "Do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good morals." This is a key verse to this section in Proverbs. As if this is the only thing you get, I hope you take away this verse. Because that's what Solomon is trying to pass on to his son. Who we surround ourselves really determines of some of the things that we may do, the way we act, talk, behave, and what may happen later on in our own lives. So in the grand scheme of things, there's nothing to gain that is worth losing your salvation over. At some point or another, I believe a lot of us had to choose a friend or a family over our salvation. And if you haven't, I believe you're one of the lucky ones. Has never had a friend or someone bring in temptation or entice us to sin. And now, I'm not saying that we have to completely eliminate all friends that are not followers of Christ. I'm just saying that we have to put up walls and barriers so we do not allow that sin in our own lives. But if the only way of stopping that sin from coming in your life means to push them away, no longer be around, which I understand is going to be extremely hard if it's a family member or someone that you've been around with growing up your whole life for a long period of time. Or you're even hard to push them away because you understand you will have funny stories and you will be entertained, or you have those things that you're actually wanting. But if you are wanting a relationship filled with sin, you have to understand there's consequences to that. But if you want a relationship filled with salvation, there's other people seeking the same thing. You're not alone. You can find new friends. You can find a better family that are all focused to be saved in heaven. Now, only you can make that decision. And then next we see is that they run, the way they walk. In verse 15 and 16 reads, "My son, do not walk in the way with them. Keep your feet from their path. For their feet run to evil, and they hasten to shed blood." This is our warning, and something that we must do. As a father, I can see myself at some point or another with Kelsey to sit down and have a talk of this same topic. Be careful of who they hang out with. Be careful of who your friends are. Be aware of some situations your friends may get you in. Stay away from some things that they may be doing. As a parent, giving this type of advice comes with concern, as I know what type of people their friends may be, sadly, as I may have been one of them at one point. But knowing that even them can change, and even though my children can have a great impact in their life, hopefully when they're a lot older and have a understanding of God's word, they can help bring them to salvation, but I still have to give the warning. They still have to know that their friends may entice them to try to do things that is not correct. And so it kind of brings this point, as many of us here are already older. I want you to try to put yourself in the position of a child receiving this type of message. And also as a parent giving this message, what kind of things would you say? How would you approach it? And what could you take from it? And so, as I see how important it is to spread this message onto every kid and teen, how would they take it? That is up to them. And that's what they do with it. And that's as far as a parent can sometimes go. The advantage, some of the ways that we see that they are talking is that they run to evil. And so, we have to understand that many people hasten to shed blood. They can turn on you on a dime. And it's something that we have to be aware of. And knowing that the way that they are walking, and once we see how they are walking and behaving, the way they talk, should be some red flags for us. And it should show us that we should not be associated with them. We shouldn't walk that same way. We should not speak their language. And as that may be hard because of those we're being entertained, we have to know that there's a better way to walk, a better path to take. And so, continuing on, Solomon then points out what they are really doing. It reads, "Indeed, it is useless to spread the bait in the net of the sight of any bird, but they lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush their own lives." Now, we are giving 3 warnings here in these verses on how we are to walk and how we are not to walk. As they walk into the way of destruction. And not just a physical punishment and destruction, but also a spiritual one. So the 3 consequences that they have, and the first one we'll see is they suffer more than they gain. If one is committing a crime and they get away with it 10 times, all it takes is one time for them to get caught to end it all. They may have gained those 10 times, but once they get caught, all of it's gone. It was worthless, pointless. It was for nothing. As based off of the FBI's crime statistics of 2021, there was 1,964 bank robberies in the United States. Now, this is not a complete list of all the bank robberies, as some bank robberies are not submitted to the FBI. And also some of these, the total of this bank robbery does not count of the number of people that have committed robberies. So as one person could have committed 10 or 5 of these robberies at one time. And if another part of the statistic that is kind of skewed is that if one person does multiple bank robberies and gets caught, and they only link him to 2, when in reality he did 5, they don't know how to figure out or tie in who gets caught and who does not based off of that. But what's interesting is through multiple sources looking at this list, 65 through 75% of bank robberies get caught that day. It's not, the odds are not in their favor, just in that same day. But those that get away, the percentage left over, 10 to 15% turn themselves in. Over time, the guilt, they end up turning themselves in. So that leaves 30 to 10% of bank robberies go unsolved. Again, it could be skewed because one person could have committed multiple crimes and have a couple bank robberies not tied to them. So in reality, we could be left with 5% of people do not get caught. Knowing those odds, would you want to commit a bank robbery? Because the odds are not looking good. You have 5% of getting away. And that's if you don't turn yourself in. So it kind of brings out this point. We have to think about our actions and things that we do and understand there's a consequence to these things. And that should deter us from wanting to do it altogether. But people don't really think. We have to be aware of these things. And so, another statistic I want to bring out is in 2017, the New York Post did a cover over bank robberies and found that in 2015 through 2016, 86% of bank robberies were caught in New York. The odds are not even greater there. Again, the point of these statistics is to show that crimes like bank robberies, just in a matter of time, you will get caught. It just takes time. Just like any sin or anything wrong that we may do, any lie we may have, it will come to light. It will be shown. There's no hiding it. It's just a matter of time. And so then we have our next point, where I titled this Predator Attacking Predator. This is the part where Solomon says, they lie in wait for their own blood. Now, Mark shared a story with me, a couple stories that I'll bring out throughout this lesson, but the first one is how sometimes you had cases where a drug dealer, I named him drug dealer number 1, would rob another drug dealer, right? And then the next day, he would find that drug dealer, number 1, dead. Because another drug dealer heard what he did and killed him to gain. Because one made and saw an opportunity to gain in money and power, someone else saw that and saw what he gained and wanted it for themselves. So they made a target on their own back for pursuing gain through violence. So not only are you targeted and you have less odds against you when you commit crimes and the law comes after you and punishment happens that way, but you're making yourself vulnerable to those who are committing crimes themselves. So not only are they seeking to steal, to murder, or do anything to gain money and power, they are making themselves targets. And so we also have those who entice others can make you a victim. The last point that Solomon makes is that they ambush their own lives. This kind of goes back to verses 10 and 11, as they are targeting the innocent, but now they're also targeting each other. This is close to the point just made before, but they're enticing someone to do something, and once that task is completed, the one enticing turns on them and causes them to take the blame for what they just did, and they look innocent throughout it. A really good, I think, illustration about this that kind of reminded me of something like this was the movie the Dark Knight Batman movie in 2008. The movie starts off with a bank robbery, and there's 5 or 6 bank robbers, and there's 2 of them at the vault, and one of them's drilling through the vaults, and they're coercing, like saying, hey, if we take out another robber, then we can get a bigger pot of the money. And so the other one's like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And as soon as the bank robber gets through the vault and they open it up and they see all the cash, the dude shoots him right there. And then he starts piling up all the money and taking it out to the front. And as he's taking it out to the front, the Joker is with another guy out in the main lobby. And they get in a fight with someone with a shotgun, and they get through it, and the Joker just turns around and shoots the guy. And so the guy bringing the money in comes in and realizes it's just him and the Joker, and he doesn't know he's the Joker. And the Joker's backing away from the door because he knows what's going to happen. And the guy is pointing the gun at the Joker, and he gets run over because the bus comes through the front door, as the Joker knew was going to happen. And so the bus driver gets out, and he sees all the money. He's like, wow, that's a lot of money. So he starts loading it into the bus. And as soon as he's done, he asks, where's everyone else at? Bam, he goes down. The Joker gets in the bus and drives away all by himself. He enticed and hired each and every one of those guys, and they all turned on each other. They made themselves the victim. They made themselves the prey. They put themselves in an opportunity to be ambushed, all by the same person that hired them. Now, sadly, this doesn't only happen in movies, but in everyday life. And it may not be to this extent or to that crazy and outlandish, but it does happen in smaller ways. Now, how crazy would one be to follow through with something they already know is bad, but knowing that one of these 3 things will happen to you? How would you feel knowing that you were going to suffer more than you gained? That you are making yourself a target to those who are doing the exact same thing you are, and that you will become a victim. Your odds are not in your favor. You have to think about what we are doing. And so when we look at the summary part that Solomon closes with, talking to his son, it says, so are the ways of everyone who gains by violence. It takes away the life of its possessor. So again, not only are they victims being targeted, they are taking away their own life. As everything before was a punishment in a physical way, it's also how as things happen on earth. But they're also taking away their life in a spiritual form. Solomon focuses on someone who is seeking to kill the gain. They may escape punishment or even death from their enemies, but they can never escape death entirely. It's going to happen. They will find themselves in front of the ruler of life and death, one who has full control of where they go for eternity, for their entire life moving forward. For eternity, they will have either life in eternal punishment or eternal happiness. Only they can make that decision beforehand. Only we can make that decision where we go. And it does somewhat start with who we surround ourselves with and how we walk, what path we take. Now, kind of going back to how I mentioned the view that we are to somewhat see this and take this section of text. As the parent, again with concern, with worry, of how a child may be walking or what path they are taking. The parent is warning and pointing out the consequences of taking from others just for a gain of wealth. Is wrong. It's dangerous. It's even pointless. There is no value on earth, and no matter what total it may be, it is not worth losing salvation. And then from the view of the child receiving this from a parent, they may disregard it. They may not listen to it at all. But they may hear it and what's being said and think of all the people that may be bringing them down this wrong path, this wrong way of walking. Knowing the dangers of what could happen, they change who they are hanging out with. They change the way they speak and how they act and talk. And understand that there is a better way of going about throughout this life. And they surround themselves with different people that are like-minded in the way of walking to salvation. So there are many dangers in the world, as this may be one of them, and sometimes we may even forget this one. We may have some hard decisions to make to continue on this path to salvation. It may seem lonely, as if we may have to leave some people behind. But there are other people that can help us continue on this walk, as there are people here to do so and help, to become better friends, better family, to encourage you to make those right decisions. But the last point I want to point out is that if you don't think this lesson applies to you, I want you to think of it this way. The sin we are struggling with is like the crimes, like the bank robbery, like us wanting to seek to kill for gain. The sins that we do, even though they may be in secret, they may be personal, they will eventually come to light. You will get caught. Only you can make that decision to make it right with God, to be forgiven of those things, so you can be saved. Because all sin is pointless. It's useless. It's worthless. No matter how much you may feel like you're being pleasured or seek gain in, it may be fun, it's all worthless. So if there's anyone here that is in need to correct their life by putting on Christ in baptism, I encourage you to come forward.